Hi, I'm Ralph Shaw. I'm spokesperson for the League of Women Voters of Bloomington, Monroe County, and I'm delighted that people have joined us this evening for our candidate forum. This is one of the events that the League sponsors and co-sponsors with several other organizations as a way to help people in our community get to know the candidates for whom we'll have an opportunity to vote on November 8th, or earlier if we vote early. I'm very glad that you're here, and it's important to be making this decision wisely. Like all of the co-sponsors for the forum, the League is a nonpartisan organization. We do not support or oppose political parties or candidates. We provide voters with the information about the candidates to help them get to know the candidates and their positions on the issues. All the candidates for these contested offices were invited to participate in this event, and we're very glad that Lee Jones and Peter Iverson are here to take part with us. I'd like to now. Move along. And I want to thank the co-sponsors for this event. These were people who also helped to put together the questions for the candidates: Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Inc. of Bloomington Alumni Chapter, the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce, Hoosier Action, Indiana Coalition for Public Education, Monroe County, Kappa Tau Omega Chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, League of Women Voters Bloomington Monroe County, Monroe County Now, NAACP Monroe County, and South Central Indiana Citizens Climate Lobby. And special thanks to Community Access Television Services, CATS, for recording this event. I am delighted to introduce our moderator, Mary Morgan, of Heading Home of South Central Indiana. Mary is also a board member of the Bloomington Urban Enterprise Association, Bloomington Housing Authority, and Downtown Bloomington Incorporated. Mary, you'll be the moderator and you will set the stage for us now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ralph. And thanks everybody for attending. It's really special to be able to talk with the candidates in this way. Welcome to our virtual forum among candidates in contested races to serve on the Monroe County Commission, Board of Commissioners, and the Monroe County Council. In this forum, it's important to note that all the candidates were invited to participate. We want to thank these candidates for participating with us tonight. Peter Iverson, who's running for Monroe County Council, District 1, and Lee Jones, who's running for the Monroe County Board of Commissioners, District 1. And I should just note that although both of them are running in District 1, they are separate public bodies, so they are not running against each other. And now I will review the rules. Each candidate will be asked to give a 1-minute opening statement, followed by a series of questions. We'll conclude our round of questioning with each candidate giving a 1-minute closing statement. The order of the questions will rotate, so neither candidate will answer first all the time. And candidates will have 90 seconds to answer each question. Please monitor the clock that's visible in the gallery view. When there are 10 seconds remaining, please finish your sentence and conclude. When time is expired, a candidate may be interrupted and asked to conclude. And I don't like interrupting people, so let's hope that doesn't happen. We will begin with opening statements alphabetically. Peter Iverson, please begin. You have 1 minute for an opening statement.
Well, thank you so much, Mary. It's a pleasure to see you again. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event tonight. You know, my team is out there knocking thousands of doors, encouraging people to vote. And one of the questions we get all the time is, I just don't know who's on my ballot. And, you know, we are so fortunate to be able to gear people towards Vote 411. It's a great resource. And we're just so happy to have that to share with voters. My name is Peter Iverson, and I'm running for the Monroe County Council in the 1st District. And I'm running to invest in community. I think that's one of the most important things that the County Council, which the fiscal body, can do. And I think there's 3 main ways we can do that. Number 1, I think we need to be investing in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Number 2, I think we need to be investing in combating climate change. And number 3, I think we need to continue to invest in public health.
Thank you. Good timing. Lee Jones, please give us your opening statement.
My name is Lee Jones, and I'm running for re-election to commissioner. Before I was elected commissioner, I served on the council for 6 years, the Plan Commission for 10, Parks and Rec for 8, and the Board of Zoning Appeals for 4 years. I have a deep knowledge of county government, and I know how to get things done. My first term as commissioner was rather unusual in that COVID, an unexpected and unplanned for event, consumed much of it. I am very proud of the county's response to that emergency, but it did cause things I had hoped to work on to be sidelined. A couple of these challenges are criminal justice reform. Our jail has been determined to be unconstitutional, which means we must build a new, more treatment-oriented jail before we are forced to by the feds. We also need to protect Lake Monroe. It is our only community's source of water.
Thank you. Now we'll start our series of questions, and we're going to begin with Lee. And this first set of questions focuses on economic development. Monroe County government is a recipient of nearly $30 million in American Rescue Act funds that need to be expended in the next 4 years. What are your top priorities for the portion of this funding that hasn't yet been allocated?
We have yet to actually prioritize everything that we hope to work on. We have worked with the council to create a plan, which includes a number of different areas of concern. We have recently had a survey up on our website for the community to indicate what their priorities would be. And we're hoping to have a pretty public discussion so that we can really find out where the community would like us to spend this money. Thank you.
All right, and Peter, I'll repeat the question. Monroe County has nearly $30 million in American Rescue Act funds that need to be expended in the next 4 years. What are your top priorities for the portion of the funding that hasn't yet been allocated?
Well, that's such a great question. And, we've already allocated funds to where we think we can make a difference in the community, such as housing and making sure that there's supportive housing in our community. We're really proud of that. And when it comes to that decision alone, we worked collaboratively with partners across our community to make sure that what we were investing these dollars in really counted. That number, that $30 million sounds like a big number, but it can go fast. And so that's why I would want to be prioritizing our dollars to focus in on areas where we have identified risk. And Lee Jones mentioned some of those. And of course, I think that one of the top areas is, in addition to housing, is other areas where we know that we can make a difference with mental health. I think that is something that we can do, which includes transportation. It includes being able to ensure that folks have resources they need. And it also includes that we can take a stand against substance use disorder, which is having a deleterious effect on our community. And that's why we have been so successful in erecting some locks boxes throughout our community and making sure our first responders are well resourced. In addition, I would want to make sure that we were including funds to combat climate change and also to invest in public health.
All right, thanks. And we'll stick with you, Peter, for the next question. How would you invest food and beverage tax revenue? Apologies for the siren. How would you invest food and beverage tax revenue in rebuilding our county's tourism industry and workforce? And what's your position on the convention center expansion?
Oh, Mary, your question has great timing. I've been serving on the Monroe County Council for 3 years now, and I currently serve on the Convention Visitor Center Board. I work very closely with our tourism experts, and I believe that the consensus with those experts, as well as with leadership in in Monroe County is that a CIB is the step forward. Now, CIBs are these community investment boards that exist in other communities that have successfully managed convention centers in other Indiana communities. I think it's vitally important that we expand the current convention center. And I think that that's important for a couple reasons. Number one, we are actively losing business. Most folks don't know that tourism is one of the biggest industries in Monroe County and Bloomington. And there are folks that want to bring their conventions and their business into our community, but they simply can't do it because there isn't enough space. That's happening to the tune of about $2 million a year. We need to stop that. We need to expand our convention center to encourage that. Now, food and beverage tax dollars were created by, the tax was created by the county council for the purpose of expanding the convention center. And I am all in favor of doing that as soon as possible.
Thank you. I'll repeat the question for you, Lee. How would you invest food and beverage tax revenue in rebuilding our county's tourism industry and workforce? And what's your position on the convention center expansion?
Well, I want to make it clear, first of all, that the food and beverage tax revenues are divided between the city and the county, with the city getting the largest portion of them. And the city has committed to the convention center with their portion. The county has more discretion with what to use their portion with, although it is considerably smaller. But we've been working for some time now on the possibility of a new county park that we hope would be a learning instrument for karst terrain and also for the history of PCBs in this county. And that will be in the northwest part of the county, close to I-69, and we hope it will really draw a number of tourists. What Peter said about the convention center is very much the way I feel about it. We had at one time pretty much agreed on a capital improvement board. Just short of that agreement, COVID happened. And then since we've taken up discussions again with the city, the mayor has made it clear that he's no longer interested in a CIB. So it may take a while to work things out again, but we do hope to see it go forward.
Thank you. This question will start with Lee. How would you balance the needs of rural and urban residents in overseeing the growth of the county?
Well, that's difficult for the county to do all by itself because, of course, it's something that we would work with the city on. But the county has designated certain growth areas. We are hoping to be able to arrange for some affordable housing. One of the things that I think can make a big difference in the growth of the county is countywide transportation, which is an issue that we've been working on for a while. And as for Bloomington, well, they have their Economic Development Commission, they have their Redevelopment Commission, and they tend to have their own plans for development, for growth, which the county doesn't have a lot of say in. So basically, we have to, although city citizens are our constituents, we do not have as many responsibilities with them as we do with the county constituents.
All right, thank you. Peter, I'll repeat the question. How would you balance the needs of rural and urban residents in overseeing the growth of the county?
Well, Mary, I think that's a really timely question. Again, the Monroe County Planning Department is currently undergoing a Monroe County Comprehensive Development Ordinance rewrite. You can find more information about that at monroecdo.gov. Simply Google that. I think it's monroecdo.org, but I could be getting that URL incorrect. But we have held listening sessions in both in all corners of Monroe County to get public input on how they feel zoning should be going in Monroe County. I think that's the first part. The second part is, if you look at the studies that have been commissioned on housing for our area, there is a supply issue. I think that we certainly need to be looking at increased density in certain parts. And I think our planning department has identified those. And I think that in other portions, I think that we don't need that density that needs to be there. What I do know is that as I've traveled the first district, at least for the county, which is the eastern third of Monroe County, I have all three major body of waters in my district: Griffey, Lemon, and Monroe. And the concerns of folks about, particularly up at Lake Lemon, about needing to dredge their lake and the sediment that's coming into their lake, and ways to develop that property so that they continue to have people enjoying that body of water. Those are very unique from individuals who are down in Salt Creek Township or Polk Township or Clear Creek Townships. And I think that we are continuing to have conversations with folks.
Okay, thanks, Peter. And we'll continue with you and move to a topic that both of you have already touched on: housing and transportation. Peter, do you believe that Monroe County's housing stock meets the needs of its residents? If not, what can government officials at the county level do to address this?
I do not have enough time to answer this question. So what we know right now is that based on the Regional Opportunities Initiatives Housing Index, housing study they conducted in 2019, is that there's simply not enough housing in our area to meet demand. The supply is too low, the demand is high. Now, so you might be, tempted to say, well, let's just build. But the problem is that the mortgage rates and the monetary policy of our country is changing rapidly. As rates rise, what we're seeing is that folks feel like they're locked in to their current housings, and so people are less reticent, or they're more reticent, to move, which further reduces the housing stock that's available. I think one of the solutions that we can work on is continue to look at our planning, continue to look at this comprehensive development ordinance to make sure that we're looking at areas that can support increased density. The second thing that I think we can be doing is increase our communication and collaboration with the Bloomington Board of Realtors to be making sure that we have our fingers firmly on the pulse of the ever-changing landscape of local realty. And I think that that's going to be important as we move forward. As the county councilman, we can be investing dollars in certain areas, but we want to make sure we're making the right investments.
All right, thanks. Lee, same question for you. Do you believe Monroe County's housing stock meets the needs of its residents? And if not, what can Monroe County officials do to address that?
Well, no, Monroe County's housing stock certainly does not meet the needs of residents, but we're seeing the same problem nationwide. It's really a bigger problem than a county or a city or even a region. But what we have done is contribute $2.2 million to the United Way's Heading Home Plan, which we hope will help with housing problems. We've also given a large tract of land to Habitat for Humanity for them to develop affordable housing on. So those are some of the local efforts we can make. It's very difficult for government to actually do a lot about housing because what's really needed is the affordable housing. And that's something that government doesn't have a great deal of control over. We can, through permission for PUDs or various things like that, we can attach conditions that housing must be affordable. But that's only for the first time they're sold. After that, we have no control over what people pay for them. We can also build some projects and control the rent at them, which I think is something that's as important as housing for sale.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. The next question involves housing and transportation, and actually focuses on transportation because, as you know, they are interconnected. What can the county do to ensure that there is accessible, reliable public transportation that meets the needs of residents throughout the county? And Lee, that's to you.
Oh. Yeah, that's a big one because at least at this point, the county can't afford to develop its own transportation system. We're currently in discussion with the city's transportation department to try to work out certain routes. Hopefully we can work out more. We've looked at ways of expanding the rural transportation system, which does at this time run regular routes from Bloomington to Spencer, and also will pick up people on arrangement and take them into town for whatever their needs are. This hopefully can be expanded and more heavily supported. For us to actually acquire county-wide transportation, which is what I would very much like to see, we would have to work very closely with the city of Bloomington and probably also with the state.
All right. And Peter, same question to you. What can the county do to ensure that there's accessible, reliable public transportation that meets the needs of residents throughout the county?
Let me start by addressing the demand side. We know that property taxes are rising the fastest out in near where Lee Jones is, and in the areas outside of Bloomington. We know that future governments are going to need to be expanding transportation to meet the ever-growing population demands in Monroe County. So I think the demand is going to be there. And the question I think that's on a lot of people's minds right now in the transportation sector is, where can we effectively expand fixed route systems, and where can we invest in demand-based transportation? So think of Lyft or Uber, where you would call up a car. And I think that certainly has a place in our society where that can be expanded on by rural transit, and they certainly have been investing in some technology that's going to help them compete in that market. What I will say is where one of the gaps is that transportation for older adults in our community, as they need to get to doctor's appointments or other areas, is woefully underfunded. We need to be taking a much harder look at how we can be working closely with agencies on aging, as well as other groups, to be able to provide more reliable service.
All right, thank you. And we'll move on to an equally complicated issue, the criminal justice complex and jail. What measures would you support to increase safety and mental health support within our county jail? And what are some of the must-haves for the new criminal justice facility that the county is exploring? And Peter, we're starting with you.
Number one, we need to be looking at our justice system through the lens of health. We can no longer assume that incarcerated individuals be looking at them through a lens of retribution. We know that a vast majority of folks in our jail and in jails all across Indiana are suffering from mental health and or substance use disorder issues. Right now, county jails are being treated as the mental health centers that no longer exist. We are working very closely with the Board of Judges, the Board of Commissioners, and other justice partners, as well as our partners at Indiana University, to invest in making sure that we are approaching building a new jail from this paradigm. And the way that I would approach it is this. I'm very interested in the Indiana FSSA and Indiana Medicaid have a system of Medicaid reimbursement for treating inmates. We also know, in addition to this, that the Indiana Commission on Mental Health just released their report. We know that the coming legislative session is going to be dealing with mental health, and we are increasingly acknowledging that we can't incarcerate our way out of some of these issues, that instead we need to be treating our way out of these issues. And that's exactly where the Monroe County Council is looking to invest dollars.
All right, thank you. Same question to you, Lee. What measures would you support to increase safety and public health support within our county jail? And what are some of the must-haves for a new criminal justice facility?
Well, along with Peter, I would have to say that the notion that people suffering from mental health illness can be helped by putting them in jail is rather absurd. That harkens back to the 16th century, and it does seem that we should be able to move beyond that by now. We are hoping very much with this project to, as Peter said, approach it from a health perspective and a treatment perspective. Punitive incarceration doesn't actually seem to be very effective at all for people who are dealing with substance abuse or mental illness. Often people end up in jail because they're having a crisis of some sort, which is frequently caused by the substance abuse or mental illness. One of the efforts that I've worked on is opening the STRIDE Clinic, which is a STRIDE Crisis Diversion Center. And it's a place where law enforcement can take people who are in crisis, where they can safely overcome their crisis and don't have to actually interact with law enforcement at all.
All right, thank you. Switching gears a little bit, we're going to talk about, next couple of questions are related to elections. And this first one will be for you, Lee. What measures do you support to improve and secure elections and voting access in Monroe County?
Well, I'm in support of pretty much any measure to do that. Personally, I think that it would be a very good idea to move to voting centers, which would give much easier access for people. A voting center would allow people to vote in one of many different places or several different places, which would be much more convenient for lots of people. Along with that, well, I personally think that mail-in ballots would be the best way to bring more citizens into actively participating in our elections. Along with building the new jail, we hope to open up space in the county, and we do hope to eventually bring all of the voting functions into one building, which does make it generally more secure and more convenient for a lot of people. But that's going to be a somewhat long-term project because we have to do some building before that can happen.
All right, same question to you, Peter. What measures do you support to improve and secure elections and voting access in Monroe County?
Well, I actually want to start by challenging the premise of your question. Here in Monroe County, we have some amazing experts that have been working on elections for a very long time. And I'm proud to say that elections in Monroe County are secure and they are safe. We have had multiple audits. We've had folks coming in and trying to suss out where there are gaps. And time again, Monroe County has been seen as one of the safest places to conduct your votes. In addition, the Monroe County Council continues to fund requests from the clerk's office to make sure that our equipment is continually up to date. And I think that that's really important, that they have the resources that that office needs to make sure that they're going to the trainings they need to, they're working with our state partners. And I would, just further, I just want to plug real quick here. The deadline to register to vote is tomorrow, and early voting starts Wednesday. So it's really important that Monroe County, we also have early voting times. And I think providing the location at the old Napa building where folks can go and vote early is just one more way that we can make sure that people have the faith in our democracy. And I really want to put it out there. Voting in Monroe County is safe and it is secure.
All right, well, we'll stick with you, and you may challenge the premise of this question too. Do you believe that all citizens in Monroe County have equitable access to register to vote and or cast a ballot? And if not, what should be done to address that issue?
I think that one of the barriers to being able to vote is access to internet. We have multiple internet providers that come in from all the corners of Monroe County. And we know that in the rural areas, it's oftentimes much harder to access the internet. And where that comes into play is that if you wanted to check your registration on Vote 411, you may not be able to access the internet. And, you know, I go out and as I'm knocking doors with my team and talking to voters about the importance of having a plan to vote, that's one of the things that comes up when we're out in rural Monroe County is that folks say, I'm going to have to go into town to look this up. So I definitely think expanded broadband is something that we need to be investing in. That's part of our ARPA plan, American Recovery Plan dollars. And I think that that's the key part of expanding this. And then the last part that I'll mention is transportation. So again, if there is not reliable service from rural areas into town to vote or to your vote center, I think that's an issue. I know that there are organizations in town that do work to provide rides to voters, but I do worry that that's just simply not enough. And that's why I think Commissioner Jones is spot on. Mail-in ballots are a great way to address this.
All right, same question to you, Lee. Do you believe that all citizens have equitable access to register to vote and or cast a ballot? And if not, what should be done to address that issue?
No, I don't believe that at all. Indiana has one of the earliest cutoffs for voter registration in the country. And this is something that's controlled by the state. But I believe that we should really be trying to work with the state to allow registration. I honestly think that people should be allowed to register up through election day. Along with that, as I've already said, I think mail-in ballots would give the most access to everyone, but the vote centers is another thing that can help quite a bit. And in general, well, yes, transportation is also a factor that can often keep people from voting, although a lot of effort is put into making rides to the polls available, but not everyone knows how to access that, and not everyone even knows that it's possible. I think probably the most important thing is going to be working with the state because they do control most of how elections are run in the state of Indiana. And they have not made voting an easy thing to do for us.
All right, thank you. The next few questions will focus a little bit more on internal county issues. And we'll start with Lee. What county infrastructure priorities do you think need the most attention?
Well, I would have to say the justice system is the place where we really need to start. And people need to understand that our jail has actually been determined to be unconstitutional, which means that anytime the feds can step in and make us build a new jail, and they can control the size and the design of it. And the only way we can keep this from happening is by proceeding ourselves before we're required to by them. In Vigo County, they were required to build a jail by the feds, and it has not made anyone there very happy. So to me, this is really an important part. But then that's kind of like a deck of cards falling. As a jail is built, it gives us more space in the Justice Building. It also will allow us, what we hope to do is co-locate a whole lot of the overall justice system on the same property. And that is a big project, and then gives us a lot more buildings that are downtown that we can work with. The county is always short on space. So any efforts to find more space are important.
All right, thanks. And over to you, Peter. What do you think the county infrastructure priorities should be that need the most attention?
This is a tough question. You know, this is kind of like asking which one of your kids do you love the most? Monroe County has so many departments that are, staffed by the best people. There's just so much expertise in every single one of our departments. And, it's so hard to put a finger on it. There are some days that, our highway department would be top priority because they're going to be out there with plows, making sure that you can get to work in the morning. Maybe it's them, buying the materials to fill in the potholes to make sure that your suspension doesn't go out as you drive over the potholes. Or maybe it's the health department to make sure that the place that you're going to go eat tonight has food that's safe. Or maybe it's the coroner's department that makes sure that there's dignity at end of life. There's just so many departments that are doing such great things. And, I think about the board of judges who are just constantly making sure that our community reflects just amazing values, down to our prosecutors department that's working to suss out systemic racism from their department and working to divert as many people as possible from jail. I could just go on and keep listing departments. I don't think that's what you want to hear. But at the same time, it's like asking whether I love my 4-year-old or my 7-year-old more. And the answer is I love them all equally.
All right, thank you. So we know that the pandemic was a challenge for really anyone in the workforce, but especially health professionals. How would you focus efforts to retain public health professionals who are working for the county? And that's you, Peter.
So I've been the liaison to the health department that my entire time on the council. I was liaison to the health department all through the pandemic. And what we did worked. It wasn't always popular, but we allocated dollars to make sure that businesses stayed afloat, that people had a job to go to. We made sure that there were mask mandates so that the spread was kept low, and that saved lives, full stop. We worked really hard to make sure that we were doing what we needed to do worked. But it meant that there was a lot of overtime hours, particularly in the hospitals and particularly in the health department as well. So what we've done is we've shown leadership. We have increased the amount of pay to make it competitive with other sectors for our health department. We've listened to our health department experts to say, listen, we do not have internal epidemiology. And that's something that we need to make sure that we can track disease as it spreads in our community. I think that's important as well. And then the other issue I think that's really important that you saw through the pandemic that we need to continue to move forward with is open communication across community partners. You saw weekly Zooms with the Board of Commissioners, including Commissioner Jones, Indiana University, IU Health, and other partners. And that's exactly what we need to make sure that people are staying on board through the next health crisis.
All right, thank you. And Lee, how would you focus efforts to retain public health professionals working for the county?
Well, first of all, I would commend the council for their efforts to bring their wages up to the norm for the area. And We also recently have a new health director, and we're looking at probably making some changes. As we've mentioned, we prefer to deal with community justice from a health perspective. And this may mean that we'll be shifting some more money to the public health department so that they can be more a part of this effort. We also, well, I'd have to say I'm very, very proud of the county's response to COVID. We, as Peter mentioned, we made grants to a number of local businesses that allowed them to stay in business, and these were grants, not loans. We also managed to get extra funding to the township trustees so they could help people who are in danger of being evicted or can't pay their utility bills or other important needs. And that was an extremely successful endeavor. In general, the county, the entire community has worked together very, very well. And that's probably one of the reasons that Monroe County had one of the best outcomes in the state.
All right, thank you. And sticking with you, Lee, what do you feel are the biggest challenges facing the county's workforce?
Well, I guess that probably, in a sense, it's affordable housing, in that while that we do have jobs here, and a number of them are very good jobs, but people can't afford to live here. And so that is definitely holding back the county's workforce. Transportation would be another problem. As more and more businesses locate in the county rather than the city, there's no transportation available to those businesses. So the only people who can consider working at them are people who have cars or have some way of getting a ride to their job. Another issue that I would like to see worked on is Workforce One. We would like to have a much closer relationship with Workforce One and hopefully be able to help people who are coming out of jail actually find good, reasonable employment so that they will be able to have a place to live, to take care of themselves, and hopefully to not have to interact anymore with the law enforcement system.
Thank you. And Peter, from your perspective, what are the biggest challenges facing the county's workforce?
Yeah, and this is Monroe County, the County Council's bailiwick. In addition to looking at tax dollars and budgets, we also control a large portion of the human resources across. This is true of all the counties. And what we're experiencing in county government is the same as you're probably experiencing in your businesses. And that is, we're having a hard time attracting talent, and we're having a hard time retaining talent. One of the biggest portions of our meetings in this past month has been to talk about not only increasing the cost of living adjustment, which we're looking at a 5% increase, but on top of that, giving an additional retention bonus so that we can keep the institutional knowledge and our talent here in county government. And I've already talked about some of the ways that county government is exceptional in the services they provide, and we just can't have that turnover. So we're doing everything we can. In addition, I am president of the Personnel Advisory Council for the Monroe County government, and so we are looking at referral bonuses. We're also looking at ways to provide incentives to employees to address the racial and ethnic disparities that exist. The vast majority of Monroe County government employees are white, and that doesn't reflect our community.
This is a related question. Are there specific changes that you would support in employment policies to address some of these issues of recruitment and retainment, such as flexible work schedules, remote work, paid family leave, for example.
Yeah, so, I'm sorry, it's my turn. I just started talking. Paid family leave in particular came up at a different forum. It is not something that Monroe County currently has, and we've already given instruction to our human resources department to start looking into ways to formulate that. That's something that the community spoke out and brought my attention to, as well as my colleague, Jennifer Crossley. And we've both been working to try and rectify that. One of the biggest issues that we see in retention of employees is compensation. For some departments, it's so easy to go across the county line and get a job at that county because they just pay more. And so that's why we did a comprehensive compensation study, and we brought everyone's wages up to be competitive in their own kind of industries. I think that's really important. I think you had mentioned some policies such as flexible work schedules and remote work. The Monroe County Board of Commissioners has been very gracious to create policies that allow department heads to implement that. And I think that, just like every other business, we're watching that closely to try and suss out, if that's working for the provision of services or not.
Okay, thanks. And same question to you, Lee. Do you support changes in employment policies? The examples I gave were flexible work schedules, remote work, and paid family leave, among others.
Yes, I very much support those things. As Peter mentioned, when the pandemic occurred, we actually closed county buildings, and all of our employees were working from home except for a few essentials. And it was very, very successful. What we've discovered is that there are a number of people who find that they're much more productive if they work at home. And then there are also a number of people who find that they really miss the camaraderie and collaboration that comes from being together in an office. I think flexibility can allow both of those things to happen quite easily. Another thing that I think could be very useful is if the county could provide support to businesses to provide child support for their employees. There are a number of people who would like to be working, but child support is so expensive, or child care is so expensive, and it just doesn't seem worth it to them. I think that, and also it's difficult. It's difficult when children get sick and things like that. And if the children are at work with their parents, or at least available from work, I think that would help convince a whole lot of people that this is a good place to work.
All right, thank you. We're going to switch to a couple of questions related to social and racial justice and equity. And this one will begin with you, Lee. What can county government do to improve social and racial justice in Monroe County, whether it's within county government itself and your employees or throughout the county?
Well, within the county itself, I think we do need to have a focus on becoming more diversified in who our employees are. And this is important because we really need to be able to hear from a number of different sectors of the county. And when so much of the county workforce is white, we're not really getting that perspective very well. I also feel that basically, I'm sorry, I've forgotten the question.
That's okay. The question was, what can county government do to improve social and racial justice?
Yeah, Yes. Well, one thing that the county has also done is had a very comprehensive diversity training program, which I think has helped with county employees. And once again, I do think that if the county's employees were more diverse, we would do a better job of addressing social problems within the community itself. We would have a greater understanding of that and would be much more effective, I think.
All right, and over to you, Peter. What can the county government do to improve social and racial justice in Monroe County?
First of all, it starts with us, the leaders. So I am a cisgender, straight, white male. I definitely should not be the expert talking about social and racial issues. And instead, what I've learned, and I've written about this on my website, peteriverson.org, is to listen. I think that's fundamentally important with leadership on this issue, is that we need to be listening to women of color, we need to be listening to people of color, and we need to be listening as much as possible, whenever it's possible. The second thing from a government perspective is I think that we can get all the credit in the world for talking about how woke we are. But if you don't see policy and you don't see investments, then it's all for naught. I think that, one of the ways that we can be moving forward is making sure that whether we're talking about justice issues or health issues or transportation issues, you see us and you hear us making policy that's from an equity lens. And we're doing that right now in the Environmental Commission. We're doing that right now in the criminal justice issue. And, that's not my idea. That's the work of multiple authors. But I think that's really the crux, is doing the personal work and making sure that it's getting into policy.
Could you, this next question, I was just basically asking you to elaborate a little bit more about how that equity lens is being applied to some of the decisions that you're making or will be making with the new criminal justice facility.
So we know from, I'm going to touch on justice, but I don't want to take too much away from what Commissioner Jones is going to talk about too. But we know from IU professor Eric Grauman that systemic racism exists in our justice system in Monroe County. We know that for whatever reason, and they're doing the statistical studies to try and suss it out, as individuals move through our justice system, more and more Black individuals and increasingly Black women are ending up in our jail. That is not okay. We are taking steps to not only identify that issue, but also to rectify that issue. Through the lens of the way that we're tackling climate change, we know that communities of color are disproportionately affected by issues of environmental degradation. We know that communities of color tend to live in areas that are more prone to the type of events that are going to happen in Monroe County. And what we know from the Environmental Resilience Institute at IU is that we're going to see increased flooding, and we're going to be seeing increased high heat days. And we need to be talking with our emergency management department, our health department, as well as the council and the commissioners, to make sure that we are building resilience in those communities ahead of our own.
Thank you. And Lee, how do you think the county should be applying an equity lens to make decisions related to the new criminal justice facility?
That's very much the reason that we've done this entire criminal justice study, that we're working on a new jail, is because we have been aware of the fact that there is some injustice in our system, although we believe it's mostly systemic rather than intentional. And these give us a chance to look at the systems and rethink them and see how we can make them more equitable. Another thing that we're doing that I think will help quite a bit is we're in discussions with the council about creating a policy of considering all decisions that are made in county government from a health perspective. And I think that's going to be very important in the jail in particular, but countywide. If we are thinking, if with every decision we make, we are thinking about how it will most benefit those who are most in need, then I think we can start moving in the right direction. And the health perspective, I believe, will be very helpful for that.
All right, thank you. The next question relates to climate change. And Lee, we're back at you. What efforts, if any, would you support at the county level to mitigate the effects of climate change?
Well, there are many, many things that we could do. I think the most important one is the Environmental Commission's efforts with I'm blanking on the name of it, the resiliency program. And we actually have been determined we score pretty well for that, but we have areas that we definitely need to work on. And once again, we need to think about these in terms of equity. Another area that I find myself very involved in that is heavily affected by climate change is drainage, which is becoming a bigger and bigger problem in our county. We've had 200-year storms in the last 12 years, which means they aren't that uncommon anymore. Most of the building done in the county and probably in the city, the drainage engineering is done to be effective up to a 100-year storm. But that means the number of people are now flooding every 10 years or so, which is not acceptable. And these are problems that we're working on right now and plan to continue to work on.
All right, thank you. And Peter, what efforts, if any, would you support at the county level to mitigate the effects of climate change?
So combating climate change is one of my 3 platform areas. You can read more about some of my thoughts on this at peteriverson.org. But actually quite fortunate because Lee Jones, Commissioner Jones, is the commissioner liaison to the Environmental Commission. I'm the council liaison to the Environmental Commission. And so we're both dedicated to this issue. One of the things that that I wanted to add on to what Lee has already said, Commissioner Jones has already said, is that through the Environmental Resilience Institute at Indiana University, they are launching another year of the cohort program. And what this is their intentional efforts to work with local governments, to try and make sure that best practices are being introduced there. Monroe County is at the forefront. There are very few county governments that have taken place in this program. Most of the program participants are cities. And so we're really stepping out. And I think that's really important. The other item that I'll point out is that the city of Bloomington and Monroe County work together on a resiliency plan. And that has been published, and we worked with the Environmental Resilience Institute on that as well. And it's just one more area where a societal crisis, which is climate change, has led to collaboration between the city and the county.
Okay, I guess I'm going to ask you to elaborate a little bit more on that. Do you think that the county should support the production and use of non-fossil fuel sources of energy for county operations? That as an example, what would you propose as a way to reduce waste in the county? Just sort of more details about how to address.
Sure.
Yeah.
So every year, the county council and the commissioners work together on general obligation bonds. And the bond that we passed last year used those dollars to have a company come in and give us advice on where to put solar panels and electric charging stations for electric vehicles. That report has not been published yet, but I'm pretty sure that it's going to recommend that we put an increased number of solar panels on our buildings. What the news that we're hearing out of China is that the electric vehicle market is only going to grow. We know that there are an increased number of electric vehicle competitors in the United States. And thanks to the Biden administration, we now have the Inflation Reduction Act, which funnels federal dollars down to the local level for electric vehicles, electric vehicle charging stations, as well as solar and wind technology in local governments. So those the details of that act haven't been made clear quite yet, but those dollars are coming, and you're going to see an increased number of electric vehicle charging stations on county property. We already have some. We already have solar panels up. We're already using a lot of clean technology, but it's only going to increase.
Okay, over to you, Lee. Same question. Do you think the county should support the production and use of non-fossil fuel sources of energy? What would you propose as a way to reduce waste in the county?
Well, I don't see any reason why the county should support the use of fossil fuels. We're very interested in supporting efforts to change from that. One of the things that the commissioners have done recently is sign an agreement with a federal program called Drive Clean, and they'll help us look over our fleet and figure out our fleet of vehicles and figure out what we can do to make them better for our environment. And of course, the county's fleet includes a number of vehicles that may not be easily changed to electric, or an electric version of them might not be very easy to come up with, but they actually will supply vehicles for us to try out. And hopefully we can get a long ways with that. And as for waste, we know that 30% of the waste that goes to the landfill is compostable. A huge amount of waste is just being thrown away when it could be composted and actually turned into something very useful. So this is something that the Solid Waste District has been working on heavily, and actually has a program going right now where they can collect people's kitchen waste to be composted and turned into useful soil.
Okay. We'll turn to another public service question. What are your thoughts about fire protection and some of the changes that have been made in the past couple of years related to fire protection services in Monroe County? And are you satisfied with how those are delivered? And this will be to you, Lee.
Yes, much of the county has now joined the fire district, which is an overarching group that deals with all of the county, well, all the parts of the county that have joined it. It takes care of all of their fire prevention needs and fire extinguishing needs. And they've been very, very effective. And we hope to see that expand to include all the townships soon. And that's also a much more efficient way to deliver the services. We also have agreements with other fire stations, such as in the city and Ellettsville, to help each other out whenever it's necessary with a fire. I think that the county's position as far as fire protection goes is really quite strong and should be getting stronger in the near future.
And over to you, Peter. What are your thoughts on how fire protection is being handled in the county?
So in addition to the other departments that I've already mentioned, I am also the liaison to the Fire Protection District. And I'm really pleased with what's going on there. What we know is that since the creation of the Fire Protection District, if you live in areas in the first district, Benton Township, Salt Creek, Polk, Clear Creek, your response times for fire protection has increased. We are getting, decreased. We're getting to your house faster. In addition, the availability of the different types of vehicles that can respond to different types of fires and different types of crises is also increased now that we have the Fire Protection District. We're able to get more vehicles out there and help even more people. I think one of the areas where fire protection is lacking is in terms of EMT. Right now, if someone is injured and our fire district is first on the scene, a lot of times they simply don't have, they have to wait a long time for an ambulance to get there, and they don't have necessarily the tools they need to really stabilize someone. So using our American Recovery Plan dollars, we have a plan to work with them to increase the number of ambulances in our community to make sure that we're addressing that need.
All right, thank you. Recently, the county cleared an encampment of people living on county property on the west side. What policies would you support related to encampments for people experiencing homelessness? We'll start with you, Peter.
You know, I really appreciate that question. I worked really closely with our community partners to help write the Heading Home plan. I worked really closely to make sure that we were surveying other communities all across the United States to see what they're doing to try and improve the circumstances for those experiencing homelessness. And I think that's part of the way that I approach this, is that those are individuals, they're people, and that, you know, the way that they're living is not necessarily a crime. You know, I also am very fortunate and honored to serve on one of the boards at Beacon. And I think they do a lot of really good work there too. You know, one of the things that we learned from the Heading Home plan and writing that and going through the process was that what's needed and what communities have done that have really moved the needle is by building supportive housing with services. And, you know, the Monroe County government has been really intentional about trying to move investing dollars in that direction. And I think working with our partners at Centerstone and working with our partners in law enforcement, we can work to move individuals out of encampments and into supportive housing. And that's really the model, the housing first model.
All right. And Lee, what policies would you support related to encampments for people experiencing homelessness?
But these are very difficult questions to deal with. As you said, we've recently, we're in the process of clearing another encampment right now. We did a while ago, and basically when we clear one, people just move elsewhere. Many of these people really have no choice. They do not have the income or the ability to stay in a home, and that's frequently not their fault. It's not criminal to be homeless, and I think that we need to take a more tolerant attitude towards that. Heading Home is certainly, the commissioners recently had a program about Heading Home. Their progress report was given to us, and a lot of what they're doing is really important and really exciting. Another thing is that a number of the judges are working on evictions and how they happen and if anything can be done to prevent the number of evictions that do occur. There are a number of other programs that have been started, but I think one of the things that we need to understand is that some homeless people intentionally live that way. They prefer to be homeless, and those people we may not ever be able to help. So we really need to learn to be tolerant and work with them the best we can.
All right, Lee, we'll keep with you for the next question. What steps, if any, can be taken to improve gun safety in our county?
Well, our county doesn't really have a whole lot of control over gun safety. That's controlled pretty much at the state level. We can require that no guns be taken into certain public buildings. And we have done that with the Justice Building, but it's not really something that we feel comfortable about being involved in. I think certainly education is very important. People need to understand that guns actually make people less safe and not more safe. And there's a whole lot of data out there that supports that. And yeah, we need to work with families to get them to understand that guns need to be properly stored and the ammunition should be stored separately from the guns. We've had some very unfortunate incidents with guns involving toddlers, and I think families need to understand the risks involved in that. But education is probably one of the best ways for us to approach that.
And Peter, what's your view on this? What steps, if any, can be taken to improve gun safety in our county?
So I address this issue as a father. I have a 7-year-old at an MCCSC school here in town, and my 4-year-old is at the synagogue at their childcare. My wife and I are terrified dropping our kids off, and we shouldn't be. After Uvalde, insert whatever incident you want, we make sure we tell our kids that we love them before they get on the bus. And that's just terrible. It's absolutely terrible. We're getting notes from, MCCSC saying that they're conducting drills. They're really careful to tell the kids just what they need to know. It shouldn't be this way. The Monroe County Council, based on its statutory duties, has very little control, if any, over guns. Nonetheless, I am a gun sense candidate. I've been endorsed by Moms Demand in every town. And I think our role is to talk to our state legislators and tell them, we need to be putting in age limits. There's no reason kids should be walking into schools and shooting other kids. We need to end the senselessness, and we need to do it soon.
All right. We're almost at the end of our question period. The final question I'd like to ask is, in your role as an elected official, how will you stay informed about the priorities of all of your constituents, both urban and rural? And how will you keep them informed about important issues? And we're sticking with you, Peter.
That's a really good question. I send out a monthly e-newsletter that details kind of an update on what county council has been doing. I know that sometimes watching county council meetings on CATS can induce sleep. And so I want to be able to put in some bullet points about what we've been doing and really highlight the ways that we're making a difference. I also, when I'm not knocking doors and in campaign mode, I hold listening sessions at a local cafe. And I also make sure that I am sitting on boards throughout the community. Like I've already mentioned, I sit on a number of boards here in the community. I go out of my way to learn. And, I talked a little bit about this in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But, the biggest lesson that I've learned being an elected official is my job is not to speak. My job is to listen. And if I'm not going where people are, then I'm not hearing what I need to hear. And that's why I try and get out as much as I can and attend different meetings. And if you look at the participants here, you'll see that I'm joined by a number of my county council colleagues. And, that's exactly what they're doing too. We deeply care about this community, and we're doing everything we can to make sure that we're representing the values of our constituents.
All right, thanks. And Lee, how would you stay informed about the priorities of all of your constituents, both urban and rural, and how would you keep them informed about important issues facing the county?
Well, the commissioners have put several things in place to make it easier for the community to communicate with us. And we certainly want to hear from the community. We want to hear what their priorities are and what they think of what we're doing. Of course, there's always the public comment time at every one of our weekly meetings, and we hear quite a bit from the public during that time, and even more now that people can join it on Zoom. The commissioners have also established office hours 6 times a week or a month. It's a commissioner is available on Zoom, and people can discuss anything, any concerns, any ideas, anything like that they wish with us. And to find out how, where, when, and how, you can find all that information on the website. Another thing that helps me a whole lot is that I'm a vendor at the farmers market and very available to the public. So I hear a whole lot about what people need, what they're thinking, what they want when I'm at the market. And people know that I'm there and know that they can come and talk to me about those things at any time while I'm there.
All right, thank you very much. And that ends the question period for tonight. I'll ask each of you to take 1 minute to give your closing statement, and we'll begin with Lee Jones.
Thank you. I would like to thank the Women's League of Voters for giving us this opportunity to talk about our campaigns and priorities. As I said, I am very proud of the county's response to the COVID emergency. We can never know how many people, but Monroe County had a better outcome than most others in the state in spite of being a large university town. While we can't know how many people were saved, we do know that many businesses were able to keep operating due to the grants given them by the county. Now that we seem to be entering a new normal, I would like to be able to work on the things that were sidelined by COVID, such as criminal justice reform, protecting Lake Monroe, working on affordable housing in the convention center, along with other stalled projects. I've enjoyed serving this community and hope to be able to continue to do so. Please vote for me, Lee Jones, for County Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. And Peter, can we please hear your closing statement?
If you must. I want to again thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event, and also for all the work that you're doing in our community. It has not gone unnoticed. And as I shared earlier, as I'm going around in both the city of Bloomington and in rural areas knocking doors with my team, Vote 411 has just been an invaluable resource. So thank you for that tool, and just know that it is being used. You can find out more about me at Vote 411. I filled out the questionnaire, and it's good there, or at peteriverson.org. And there you'll see that I'm running for county council for re-election to invest in community. I think that can be best done by investing in diversity, equity, and inclusion, by investing in fighting against climate change, and by investing in public health. And I want to conclude by noting that I think Lee Jones is doing a great job, and I would ask that you support her in a bid for county commissioner.
All right, thank you very much. This concludes tonight's candidate forum. On behalf of all the sponsors, I thank tonight's candidates, Lee Jones and Peter Iverson, for allowing us to get to know you a little bit better and know your positions on important community issues. And thank you to Katz for recording the forum. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, but please remember your vote is your voice. You need to register to vote or check your registration by October 11th, which is tomorrow. I'd encourage you to plan how you will vote, whether you're going to vote in person early or by absentee, by mail, or in person on election day, which is November 8th. Again, the resource that we've mentioned several times, Vote 411, is a great way to learn candidate positions. And that is a fantastic League of Women Voters resource. And with that, good evening to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.